2, 1, 0.
Namaste. Om Namo Narayanaya. My name is Premanandas Bhagat, but welcome back to my show. Today I am doing a reaction video of the spiritual teacher, guru, self-help, whatever you may want to describe him, John de Ruiter. You may know his name. If for no other reason than last year he got in the news for a little sex scandal, and periodically he ends up in the news. He's been around for a few decades, though. I think he lives in Canada full-time. And so I'm going to react to one of his talks today. I have a second talk on backup. If I find I'm not feeling fulfilled with the first one, we might just make this show a little long. So please stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this. This is my first reaction video. I have played videos in this show, but I've never had the ability to stop and start something and to really react to it, and I've wanted to do that. You know, I watch these Christian videos, and I want to react to them because they make me angry, and I want to defend this faith against their lies. And I want you people to be aware of their lies, but I couldn't figure out how to make the video work. And so the other day someone made a suggestion to me, why not do a reaction video to Osho and other gurus? Why listen to my suggestions? And I was like, oh, well, gosh, I've already thought about this. Okay, I'm gonna go do it. So I started digging around in my computer and figured out how to make it work. And it was really simple. I was just being, whatever, lazy. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to see about doing some reaction videos. And I'm going to do Osho and some other gurus that I know. If you like this, let me know. And if you have a guru you'd like me to react to, just put their name in the comments. Or a video clip you'd like me to react to. Actually, anything at all. As long as it's preferably religious, even though I talk about news and current events on this channel also. As long as there's some religious niche, I'm more likely to react to it. So no, I'm not going to react to President Biden's State of the Union address. So let's keep it religious, but put it down below. And yeah, on the other hand, if you don't like this, I'm sure you'll tell me. But it won't be the first time that I've drawn ire and controversy. So today I'm going to react not to Osho, the suggestion, but to John de Ruiter. And the reason for this is because I have watched videos by him, and I'm familiar with him. I knew a guy who was involved with him about 20 years ago. I think he was probably the first guru I ever heard of by name, or one of the first gurus I've ever heard of by name. So if I have a technological explosion and this just bombs, I can salvage it and then do a discussion on John de Ruiter. Osho, there's some things I could discuss, but I would hate to start a video, react to it, and then have it fall apart, because I think I'm going to really enjoy watching his videos and responding to them. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree with him or like him or whatever. I just think I'm going to be enthralled by him in a way that, I'm sorry, John de Ruiter doesn't do it for me. And if I have a technological explosion, I can talk about John and we can have a good episode. So that's why we're opening with him. He is my test subject, which is also telling you, please bear with me if I have some technological glitches. If you've been with me this long, you know I have plenty of them. I've had plenty of them, and we seem to be lucky these days. So, yeah, let's do a reaction video. First things first, if you like the channel, support me. There's my website. I got books that I'm writing, and I'm always putting out new stuff. And also, contributions, whatever, however you want, reach out. Support my channel by sharing something with me, commenting, liking, buying, subscribe, donating, I don't know. Just show your love. However you feel you want to. It is literally always appreciated. And I do look at the comments. I don't always respond to all of them because it's just a time thing. But I am open to this, and every little bit keeps me going. So, yeah. Let's do a reaction video to John de Ruiter. I have not watched this video. I literally typed into YouTube John de Ruiter video. That was it. No, sorry, John de Ruiter talk. And this just happens to come up as one of the top ones. And it has him talking. And you can see his face and everything. There are many videos out there of audio recordings, but I don't want those because I think seeing the spiritual teacher is not super important. You can be blind and still be into it. But many of them give off a vibe, for lack of a better word. And John is famous for his quiet vibes. When I first heard about him, he was still known as sort of the surfer guy, guru. I think he was called the Germinator at the time. He had some nickname, very Terminator-like. I don't remember what it is now. And so I wanted to see him. So I just found the first video I could of a talk with him. I only clicked 1 second just to make sure I had the video and hit it downloaded properly. So I have not watched this. I then have a backup, or we'll see if I do it, interview with him. He went to England or Sweden or somewhere in Europe. Yeah, those are two different places. Somewhere in Europe, he did an interview, and it's a 45-minute interview, and I have that. May watch that. We'll just see what happens. But I haven't read the transcript. I have it here, but I haven't read it. I haven't done anything. I am literally coming into this 100% naive about what he is going to talk about. I'm not naive about John de Ruiter. I'm just naive about what he is going to talk about or what is going to happen. So it's very fresh. It is 100% a reaction, and just trust me, I promise you it really, really is. So before I do that, I am just going to take a drink of water, which may happen again. And now, let's do a little redecorating on the screen and go into Mr. John de Ruiter, and I hope you enjoy this. Please, please let me know if you do or you don't, and then I will do Osho and other teachers. So here we go on a new adventure on this channel. So the source video, the YouTube link is down below, and I will be talking over and maybe pausing or whatever.
When you are being the same as your own being, such as being open and soft in your heart, and
so I'm sorry, we're 15 seconds in. John is famous for his pauses and this very austere look of his. His first words, I have a problem with John, and we're just going to say it right off the back. I think a lot of what he says is mishmash. I think a lot of what he says doesn't necessarily make sense. I don't think he is well versed in the scriptures. I don't think he knows much about Hinduism. I think he just says anything with a lot of spiritual sounding words that may make you feel good. We will discuss that later. But do they really mean anything? And when I listen to him, I just go like, really, dude? And I'm sorry, he just walked out with the sentence. When you are being the same as your own being, such as being open and soft in your heart. When you are being the same as your own being. Let's look at this for a second. So I'm going to say, is this gibberish? Because he has a tendency to say things like this, which is very Deepak Chopra. Oh, wow, yeah, that's really catchy. And for me, a lot of it is gibberish. It's not always. I'm not saying he's a stupid guy and he's saying gibberish, but sometimes I think he's playing around. So I'm kind of gonna say let's try to figure out if this is or isn't. When you are being the same as your own being, such as being open and soft in your heart. So what he's essentially saying is when you are open and soft in your heart, you are being the same as your own being. It kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. It's one of these things where if I said like the name of the band Metallica, there's nothing metal, there's nothing, it's a made up word, but you get this feeling of metal and heavy and a machine. So it kind of works, even though Metallica means nothing. We're in the same when you are being the same as your own being, such as being open and soft in your heart. But here's my question: your own being, what is that? What is your own being? The answer to that question can radically change what he has just said. So for me, that is Jiva. So we could say when you are being the same as your Jiva, but he's not. He's saying your own being. So is there any other being in you other than your own? No. I mean, I guess maybe there could be, but I think most of us have our own being inside of us. We're just disconnected from it. So that phrase is a little weird, your own being. Oh, your own being, but what else is in there? You see, there's this fine line with him between a legitimate phrase when you're being the same as your when you're being the same as your jiva, your eternal soul, that makes sense. But then when we get rid of the specialization of the language and the religion, and we just have now it's questionable. And so basically, when you're the same as your jiva, you're being open and soft in your heart. I don't know what soft means, but you know what? I'm going to let him play. And yeah, we'll just let him play. I'll try to get more than 15 seconds in.
Being that openness and softness in the midst of yourself, that makes yourself vulnerable,
I would
which
agree with that.
introduces pain.
Yeah, that's true.
The vulnerability is your own direct experience that yourself is not like you. Yourself is not like your own being.
I would actually agree with that 100%. So that is true. And I'm going back and forth here to the transcript so I can quote him correctly. So being the openness and softness in the midst of yourself, that makes yourself vulnerable, which introduces pain. And you know what? That is absolutely true. When we are vulnerable, there is pain. Pain is life. Vulnerability leads to pain. You almost can't be vulnerable without having pain, which is why vulnerability is so scary. Part of the reason why relationships are so scary, because in relationships, if they're honest and good relationships, they're vulnerable. And there's pain in them, even in the best relationship. Or there's the potential of pain. So he is 100% correct. And then he goes, or the transcript says he goes, the vulnerability is in your own direct experience that yourself is not like you. So I'm assuming your own being, he said earlier, is also the you. So he's talking about the jiva without using the words. Uh, and our own direct experience says that we're different from ourselves. We're not connected to ourselves. We're not following who we truly are, which is actually something I talk about a little bit on this channel. So, he's absolutely correct about this. What I would say is he's using language which could be a little bit better. And he's not incorporating any Hindu scriptures or any Buddhist scriptures or anything into this. It's thus without any traditional and authoritative foundation. And that's where he becomes a New Age guy, and this becomes New Age stuff. But New Age stuff isn't always wrong. It just lacks gravitas. So that's my issue with him, is he's spouting things which are not wrong, because New Age stuff is really just based on our experiences, but it's lacking some clout because he doesn't tie himself to a Hindu tradition or any tradition. And actually, he's a Christian guy. Well, he used to be a Christian guy. So yeah, I totally agree with him on that. And then he does the other thing, which John de Ruiter, if you don't know, is famous for pausing. And I hate gurus who do this because so often it doesn't come across as you are ultra spiritual. It comes across, particularly when you're not citing any scripture. For me, it comes across as, yeah, you're just kind of, you have no idea what to say, so you're not saying anything. Just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're a great, profound teacher. Yes, we have that image. It's a stereotype. An old Japanese Buddhist monk with a beard down to here and a cane who just goes, hmm. Oh, he's so spiritual. Whereas in a chatterbox is not. But that's not true. While I have disagreements with Adidas Samraj, I think he is a very unique spiritual teacher, and he used to do talks that would just go on for days, or like 24 hours. It'd been just insane, and they were absolutely profound. And there's other people in the spiritual world who talk a lot. Just because you're quiet doesn't make you spiritual. But John de Ruiter is tapping into the stereotype. He's quiet. Thus he's enlightened. Not necessarily. He could not be enlightened. He's just kind of fooling you. This is a criticism I've heard with Amma. A lot of people don't like her because they go, well, once she starts talking, she's got nothing to say. But she's silent, so she's amazing. Her hugging's good. Has nothing to do with that. But this is a ploy, and I think John taps into it. Okay, I'm talking a lot. Let's just let some stuff play.
The forms of your being and the levels of your being are all forms and levels accurate to you,
What are these
perfect
forms?
and complete.
Well, what are these levels?
The forms of yourself
What are these
are
forms of
not
yourself?
accurate to you, and they're not complete.
What are they? And why aren't they complete?
The forms of yourself are forms of change. They're meant to change.
But we don't even know what these forms are. So are they meant to change, or is change just a natural thing that occurs to them? I don't know. There's a vagueness here. It sounds good, but again, what is this forms? And there's all these forms. What are they? Are they sheaths? Are they an Ayurvedic thing? What are they? Maybe someone watching this understands that. But I'm watching it, and I'm outside of his world, so I don't understand it. So I guess this isn't a talk for me. I don't know. And also, I think of Hinduism where we have the sheaths. Your soul is eternal. It doesn't necessarily go in a constant change. So to say like all your sheaths are changing wouldn't necessarily be completely correct. Some do. Your physical body does. So what are they? I just don't know what they are. So this is almost just, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. And okay, let's keep going. And
When you're being the same as your own being, in the midst of yourself, you expose all of the lack in yourself. You expose everything that isn't open and soft in yourself. You expose all of the holding and all of the closing, all of the hardness. To be that openness and softness unconditionally in the midst of your experience, then you are being your own being in the midst of a self of you.
I'm sorry, I have to go to the transcript here. So he said in the beginning of this talk, when you are being the same as your own being, such as being open and soft. So when you're open and soft, you are being your inner being. And now, where are we? Minute 52 in. I'm scrolling down on this transcript. Now he says, let's see, what was the thing? When you're being the same as your own being, we're off the forms now. You see, when you're being the form of yourself, and there's things that change, and now your form of yourself. Well, what about the forms that change? We're off that. It's almost like he just thinks things and he says them, but now where are we? So you've literally hit 3 conversation topics in 1 minute and so many seconds. So he goes, when you're being the same as your own being in the midst of yourself. That actually doesn't make sense. What he's literally saying, the way I hear it, is he says, when you are being the same as your being, so you're being, your jiva, let's just say your jiva, and you're in line with your jiva while you're in the midst of your own self. So there's three things happening here. So what it says is when you're the same as your being in the midst of your being. That doesn't actually make sense. So when you're with your jiva, within your jiva, if you're in tune with your jiva, you've already accomplished great things. So now this is saying in the midst of yourself. But what is that self? Is that self the same as your being? You see, it sounds good, but it's actually, it doesn't make sense. So you're the same as your being within the midst of yourself, but we don't know what yourself is. We don't know what this being is. We don't know what any of these things are. It just is nice sounding words. It's the problem I have with John de Ruiter. And you're in while you're the same as your being in the midst of your being, you expose all the lack in yourself. So do you expose all the lack in yourself that you're in the midst of? Or do you expose all the lack in yourself which is now in line with your jiva? Or do you expose all the lack of yourself which is your jiva? So when you're in the same as your own being in the midst of yourself, you expose all the lack of yourself. Well, which self are we talking about? You see, this is the one thing where Hinduism, all the other religions, we have these words that clarify. I'm talking about the jiva now. I'm talking about the material world now. But it's just the self, and you are within the self, and you expose the lack of yourself. Though, on one hand, if you are the same as your jiva or being, are you lacking? What would you be lacking? What exactly are you lacking? You are your eternal soul, which is the complete you. Are we talking about lacking good karma? You see, it's very confusing. And so then he says, well, you expose everything that isn't open and soft in yourself. But yet at the beginning of this, he said, remember what he said, when you are being in the same as your own being, such as being open and soft in your heart. But now he's telling us you expose everything that isn't soft and open, but yet it's almost like in order to be with your being in the midst of yourself, you're not going to be completely soft and open. So if you're only partially soft and open, you see, it doesn't actually make sense when you break it down and get rid of all the pauses. Let's see, what else says he? You expose all of the holding and all of the closing, all of the hardness. What is opening and closing? What is he referring to? Maya? I don't know. To me, that openness and softness unconditionally in the midst of your experience, that you are being your own being in the midst of a self of yours that isn't like that. Whoa! Unless this transcript is completely off, that makes zero sense. So if you are being the openness and softness unconditionally, then where are you going to expose things that aren't that way, which he just said you would expose, but that you are in the midst of your experience. So now we have, you are a being in line with yourself, in the midst of yourself. You are unconditionally open and soft, but while in this you see how you're not open and soft while in the midst of your experience. So he said earlier in the midst of yourself, but now it's in the midst of your experience. So is your self experience? No, they're two different things. Now he goes back and he goes, then you are a being, your own being in the midst of a self. And that might be a mistranslation because this actually isn't a sentence. There's so many beings and selves without definitions. Now you could say I'm being overly harsh. And yes, I likely am. But there is a lesson to be learned here. When we listen to spiritual gurus, what are they saying? how do we feel? Because there's nothing about what he says that doesn't make me feel good. 100% of what I've heard makes me feel good. Okay, so he's got a decent vibe, and he's got a nice voice, and he says things that feel really good and inspiring. But when we break them down, what are we hearing? We're actually hearing some new agey thing which really doesn't make sense. But our mind, like when it hears Metallica, and it goes, "Oh, I know exactly what that is." Well, do you? Do you really know? No, you don't. There's no such thing. Our mind creates an association of something, and thus we know exactly what that sentence says. But I bet if you straight up ask someone, break the sentence down, they'd be like, Yeah, actually, I have no idea what it really says. I'm just kind of repeating because it feels so good." And this is a trap that many teachers do. John is our victim for today. Sorry, John. The fact that you got in the news kind of made you my number one choice. But we have to be careful when gurus give us something that sounds okay. And also, I think we have to be careful of anyone who we're following. Are they a Hindu, Sanatana Dharma, Neo Hindu teacher, all of which I find are completely shit, or are they some New Age person giving us things which, common sense, or John's probably read some spiritual books, but I doubt he's read all 12 volumes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I doubt he's read I doubt he's read this book, the Mahabharata. I just bought all 10. It, it's a 10-volume set. I now own it. I plan to read it. I doubt he's read it. So he doesn't have any religious background behind him. And for me, that's really important. It's very important. I want the foundation. I want teachers who have come before me. Um, I want teachers enlightening other teachers, enlightening other teachers. Not just this new agey stuff that's kind of made up in the moment. You know what I mean? That's my preference. Anyways, let us return to Mr. John de Ruiter and see what he says. Okay, John.
Yours that isn't like that yet. Being that in the midst of yourself is what transforms yourself.
Sorry, didn't make any sense to me. Being that in the midst of yourself is what transforms yourself. I'm so yourself. I'm meaning like this person you see right here, the blah blah blah. This red hair, glasses. I'm assuming that is the self. And then there's a jiva which you cannot see, which is inside of me, which is eternal. This self that you see will die at some point, but then there's a jiva. Now, if I connect with my jiva, then what you see here will be eliciting God's purpose for my life, and I will be this body becomes a tool for God to then use. I'll still have red hair, I'll still be blah 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 like I do, but I now become a tool. Not a tool. I become in the slang word, but I tool for God. Now, according to him, I will get in line. We don't really know what happens when we get in line. We just know there's some things and changes and stuff. We have had no elaboration on those changes, and we're going to be in the midst of oneself. Here's the thing, and I mentioned it before, so if this me is here, and I'm in line with my jiva, but I'm in the midst of something else, that actually is kind of implying that there's two of me? I don't know. Maybe there's she's. We have no idea. But now he says, being that in the midst of yourself is what transforms yourself. I would think most of us need to transform in order to be in touch with our jiva. Most people I see, I don't think are in touch with their jiva. I had someone say to me recently, I'm just floating through life. Yeah, I'm sorry. God didn't put you on this earth to float through life. And I know someone else has said to me, I just watch porn all day. God didn't put you on this planet to watch porn all day. I am so sorry. That is not your purpose in life. Is just to, whatever. Watch TV every day. It's not your purpose. So you're not in touch. So you need to transform to become part of your, closer your true purpose here. And maybe you'll never get it. A lot of people don't. But according to him, that being in the midst of this, no, he goes, being in the midst of yourself is what transforms yourself. That, how can you be in the midst of yourself? So there's me, and then I'm in the midst of something, and that transforms me, and then I'm connected to my jiva, but my jiva and I are in the midst of something. I would say more like I'm in the being in the midst of Maya might transform, or breaking Maya might transform myself, and I then connect. That makes no sense. Being in the midst of yourself is what transforms yourself. We've used the word self in many ways so far, and this is a form of manipulative talk. You use a word that you think you understand, and you use it multiple ways, but actually there's multiple definitions of self in this 2 minutes that we've done that are very, very different, but we're never really sure what definition he means. There is a sense of a lack of clarity. And that's actually a manipulative tool that people use in cult circles, because if they get really specific, that can alienate people. But if you say something very broad, people will relate, they will interpret it in a certain way. You know, if I read a book and you read a book and we both come at it with like, oh no, that's not about that, it's about this, um, things grow. But if it's very specific where it has one meaning, it's not able to connect with people. So this is actually a manipulative technique that he's using to not define his words. Okay. Let's go back to this. This 7-minute video is taking a while, and I knew it would. I'll probably not get to the second.
Sometimes I have like when I run into parts of myself that are revealed in that kind of circumstance, that it can have a very discouraging impact on me. They can kind of make me want to turn away because they're unpleasant and I have a judgment about them.
Wonderful. You're getting to know yourself.
Okay.
That's what yourself is like before transformation.
Before transformation into what? I don't think this
The
guy.
whole nature of the self is it relates to likes and dislikes, comfort and discomfort. Your being can't comprehend that. It simply doesn't relate that way.
Who is
Your
this
being
being?
is open and soft in the worst of conditions.
Is this your soul, the jiva he's talking
When
about?
you are being just like your being, in the midst of what aggravates yourself,
Whoa.
that aggravates.
So when you're being just like you're being in the midst of that which aggravates yourself, he's now changing words. So now being is the same as self? I don't think the old man knows. That's kind of what I was saying. I don't think he gets it. And the way he was asking his question, I have seen gurus and they have someone ask a question. The person asks a very specific questions, yada yada yada, and it's very specific. And it sort of echoes what the teacher says, but they put it in their own words. This guy, this fellow in the audience, was unable to really ask a question using John's words, and he seemed to be stumbling. Now, that might be talking in front of an audience, but it was just so radically different than what John was saying. I don't think this old guy got it at all. I don't think he had any clue and was trying to figure it out. And that's a dead giveaway. And then John goes off. That's what yourself is like before transformation. Now we're talking about transformation. We don't even really know what these changes are that he made. These 4 things and changes and the self. And now we're into transformation. You see, he's all over the place with random ideas. Random ideas. This is why I chose John de Ruiter. He would drive me bonkers.
Brings right into your experience what is not yet like your own being.
Who is this
When
own being? Is
open
this own being like your jiva, or is it another being, or in the midst of your being? You see, too much.
and softness of heart. Being like your own being matters more to you than yourself and then how you experience yourself. Then you will unconditionally be open and soft, like your being,
Oh, I'm not even trying.
in the midst of discomfort, in the midst of pleasure and pain, without a preference. In this way, you integrate yourself. You integrate yourself by being your own being in your own experience in every way that is contrary to yourself.
This makes no sense. And I could break it down, but I think we'd be here for
That
another half hour.
contrariness opens and softens when you, awareness, are opening and softening in the midst of it.
I think he's just making up things. He's literally just saying whatever comes into his head. I'm sorry.
So there can be a sense that you're getting worse instead of better.
Yes.
What was he about to say?
When you unconditionally open to your own being,
Is that your Jiva? Or yourself, or in the midst of
and you
yourself?
begin to have some access to its beautiful depths. Upon returning to yourself,
Is this like the
you'll
transformation?
be in for somewhat of a shock.
Why?
Because the
yourself?
forms that you resume,
Are the-
that you were used to, are so much not like what you were just in
But-
of your own being.
So you're no longer in alignment with
And
yourself.
experiencing those forms being so much more closed and harder,
Are these the forms that change? Or different forms?
the difficulty of experience and being that open in the midst of it can be really painful.
Well, yeah. Okay. Knowing yourself can be painful. That's true. But that's basic psychology.
And can make you want to turn away.
It can make you not want to open as much again.
I think the old man knows more.
The more you genuinely open in your heart and deeper, the more vulnerable you make yourself.
So that's high school
You
psychology.
expose yourself for what it is.
We learned that in high school. This isn't great
You
spiritual
begin to see
revelation.
yourself from a place of seeing that isn't in yourself. It's from your own being.
But who's doing the seeing?
But that's a place where you'd have no issue with what you see.
Ugh.
When you're coming from what your own being is like, you love seeing despite what you see.
I'm sorry. That was gibberish. I'm sorry. That didn't make. Yeah, no. I'm flabbergasted because it just really made no sense. The things that made sense were high school level psychology that we learned going out on our first date. Great profound spiritual ideas were not to be found in that video. Now, what does this say? It says the whole nature of the self is... Actually, I had to make it larger, sorry. On my screen, the whole nature of the self is that it relates to likes and dislikes, comfort and discomfort. Again, whole nature of the self. Which self are we talking about? Are the self your other being, or you're in the midst of this? We don't know. Who is the self? Your being can't comprehend that. Well, which being? This self or that self? Our Jiva probably can comprehend likes and dislikes, comfort and discomfort. It has experienced that over and over. The whole nature of the self is that it relates to these things. Your being can't comprehend that, but I bet it can. Because if it can't comprehend likes and dislikes, what type of eternal being would this be? It simply doesn't relate. So it doesn't relate to things in that way. Your being is open and soft in the worst conditions, but yet even being open and soft, you can still experience comfort and discomfort, likes and dislikes, according to my philosophy. Okay, let's see if there's any more here. When being like your own being matters more to you than yourself. So being like your own being matters, but isn't yourself your being? Or is he saying when being like your own Jiva, which is your own eternal soul, matters more to you than yourself, which is this material thing? Or is it being like your own being, capitalized being? I'm assuming that means Jiva, because I wouldn't capitalize M for materialism. This is just a body. This is a carcass someday. This is nothing. I wouldn't capitalize that. So he's saying, when you put your jiva at level of what this materialist form is, then you will unconditionally be open and soft like your being. Yes, that is exactly what he's saying. No. Being like your own being matters more to you than yourself, than you want. Oh, yeah, he is saying that. Okay, so, yes, being, exactly like he's saying, he is describing, this is the being, your jiva. When your jiva matters more to you than this self, then you unconditionally be open and soft like your being. Not necessarily you could still be deluded by Maya. In the midst of discomfort, now, again, you'd still be deluded by Maya. So you can relate to your jiva on some level, but I think you can still be, I don't think you'll suddenly be unconditionally soft and open, and I'm willing to prove that in experiments. Anyone offers to offer money, I'm more than happy to meet some enlightened people and try to piss them off, and to show that they're pissed off in the moment where they're unconditionally soft and open. So in this way you integrate yourself. Now, integrate is an interesting word, and remember, he already said transform. We don't really know what transform was, but now he integrates. So you integrate yourself by being your own being. So you integrate yourself by becoming like your jiva. So you find your God's purpose, which is what I say. But the word integrate is an interesting word. I'm probably being too harsh because that last sentence is. But let's go this one step further. If we're going to be harsh, let's be harsh. You integrate yourself by being your own being. What is the end result of that? The end result is being open and soft, like your being. So essentially you're going to be like your being. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of wordy, and after we've listened to 6 minutes of the word self and being, it does get confusing. This is a sentence he poured over. In his talks, he's not editing them. Is there anything else here that we should be watching? Oh, when you're coming from what your own being is like, you love seeing despite what you see. When you're coming from what your own being is like, you love seeing despite what you see. That's not grammatically correct. When you're coming from what your own being is like, so when you're like your jiva, you love seeing whatever it is, even despite what you see. So if what you're seeing is really bad, you love seeing it. Oh, my girlfriend's being murdered right in front of me, but I'm open and loving, and I'm like my jiva, so therefore I love seeing this. Yeah, really? So being godly means you like seeing horrible things happen? Yeah, I disagree with that. I disagree. I think if you read the scriptures, we don't have people who are just oblivious with emotions. No, Rama feels anger when something happens to Sita, and he was incredibly open and incredibly like his Shiva. He was an avatar of God, which is bigger than what John de Ruiter is. Yet he felt anger. So one would say he's not then an avatar. According to John, he's not in line with his being because he should see Sita being kidnapped and love what he's seeing despite that. But I don't see that in the scriptures. Okay, so there's a little thing. Donation. If you wish to donate. I don't know. Let's get back to our normal screen. Oh, we don't want to see our opening again. Sorry about that. And you don't need my website again. It's one thing when a guru writes something down. They take their book and they pour over it and they edit it and they edit. Maybe they give it to somebody else to edit. I know Adida used to do that. He had a team of editors. And sometimes what they would do is transcribe a talk, and then he would turn the talk into a something. And that's one thing. We can read a book by someone and go, wow, this person's really on top of it. But that is a well-honed thing, except for that last sentence, which was grammatically off. But when we see a guru who is speaking off the cuff, I think that's when we really feel what that guru is about. Are they legitimate? Are they not? You know, it's one thing for John de Ruiter to write those ending sentences, which he may not have done. It might have been an assistant making the video, and they're to the point. Whereas in his speaking is just all over the place. We have to be careful when we deal with gurus that we're not fooled by the written word that is edited and worked on. A great guru will sound the same or have the same essence whether they're talking or writing. But sometimes we can get fooled by the writing of a guru. And it's a very tricky place to be. You kind of have to compare someone's writing to, you know, their speaking to find out what they're about, to really see them. You can't judge a book by a cover. And in this case, John de Ruiter, for me, you want to do it? You want to watch the other video with me? This video is going to be super long. But, I feel like somebody is going to say, yes, Pramanand Das, you may or may not feel this way, but you've missed the big picture. You need more of John de Ruiter. So, you know what? I am going to give you more. Let's see if I can find this video here. Here it is. Is there a transcript of this? Is what I want to know. Oh, there is. Excellent. So let me get the transcripts up. It is about a 45-minute interview. I didn't want to do an interview because they're a little different, but we're going to do it. And, yes, I'm going to give him a second chance, okay? We're going to make this a long show, but I'm going to give John de Ruiter a second chance in a different context. Is that fair? I mean, I don't know if he's written any books or anything. I'd be willing to read them, honestly. If you had a book by him, I'd be willing to read it. But I'm going to give him a little more. We're going to give him 45 minutes, really stretched out, and we'll see. Maybe I still have disagreements, maybe I don't. Right now, I am just like, this guy is whatever. Before we do that, though, while I get some stuff set up here, I mentioned something early in this episode. I said we'd come back to it, and so I'm going to come back to it now, and that is the idea of how a guru can be what I consider a fraud. He can speak gibberish. He can be just nothing, and yet you still have devotees, followers who are just like, this man is enlightened, he's profound, my life is changed by him. It's the catch-22. You can have Jim Jones, Charles Manson, people who were not good at the end of the day, and find followers who go, they were amazing and they changed my life for the better. You can find folks like, let's see, Ramana Maharshi. I consider Ramana one of the greatest spiritual teachers of the last century, and he's just so profound. You can have people say, yeah, no, it was a waste of time. And this is the catch-22. It's a conversation that would make this video go on and on and on. I am simply criticizing John de Ruiter. I don't think he's legit. I don't think he's questionable. I think he is questionable. I think if you want a profound teacher, he is not the one. But that doesn't mean that people are not getting value from him. And that doesn't mean that everything he says is garbage. There's some things which are legitimate, and that doesn't mean that he's maybe not a great guy. Maybe, he'd be willing to talk to me and just go, no, I'm going to put you straight, or let's have a cup of coffee if I come to town. And I could have my mind completely blown apart by him. I might be completely wrong. And it doesn't mean that he isn't doing great things. This is the tricky part where we criticize these gurus, and yet we still have people go, yes, but. Because the experience and the guru, they're brother and sister. You can have one without the other. they can be separate, living two different lives. And it's a very interesting thing, and it's very complicated. So I'm actually doing this reaction, and while I don't think John de Ruiter is worth what you may think he is, if you have had a spiritual experience with him that is super profound, great. Good for you. But I personally hope that you move beyond him, because he's not giving you the most. He's not giving you the best. I'm not into this belief you have one guru for all your life. I don't think anyone who says that is, I don't know. I think there's better than him, but maybe you might be in a point in your life where you need someone like him. You may not be looking to meet Shiva, you just might be looking to know yourself, and maybe he's exactly what you need. And even though I think he's blah, maybe he's good for you. So this is the catch-22. I'm actually not criticizing what he does. If he makes your life good, good. But I personally have issues with him, and I'm basically trying to show that this is not a great, authentic teacher, and he's manipulating you. Okay? Have we got that? I just want to be clear on that, where I'm coming from. It's a tough question, It's a philosophical question I don't think has an answer, which way. So now let's go to the 2 interviews that I have, and actually what I'm going to do is, for anyone who wants to watch these, I'm going to put them, before we do this, I'm going to put them in the description below, just so you can watch them, or if something happens with the stream, though it seems to be working okay. So let's just do this before I continue. Also, I'm putting the descriptions in the link down below right now in case you'd like to follow the transcript like I do, and then you can access these. So there they are now in the descriptions, and we can do this. And so now let's do the next 45 minutes with an interview with John de Ruiter. Okay, and let's go.
Hello, John. Welcome to Amsterdam.
Amsterdam.
You've been here before, I guess?
Several times.
Yeah. Anything particular you like about Amsterdam?
The architecture. It's rather obvious.
Great European architecture.
People are nice to see.
Big difference with where you come from, Canada?
It's quite a difference.
What's the main difference?
There isn't the same amount of culture. It's quite a cultural difference.
No, it's just a different culture. Well, it's Western
And the
culture.
way people act and react
I've been
to
to
each
Canada.
other?
Been to Vancouver. Almost just about lived there.
So, for Amsterdam is a bigger mind.
A bigger mind
What does that mean?
than back home in Canada.
So Canadians are
Okay,
stupid?
I would guess the other way around. That people here in... Well, I know what you mean. You mean less narrow-minded than...
Just broader-minded.
and open to talking.
Broader-minded, yeah.
Yeah. Could you say that Dutch people are more uptight than people over in Canada? Because
Yeah.
These
maybe
are
that's because
weird
that's why
opinions.
we're like searching for enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, to get out of that tightness.
That's possible.
John gives out this vibe that he's not
The
very
message
intelligent.
you,
I'm sorry, I
you
don't
tell
get
to
an
people,
intelligent vibe from him.
Over here, of all over the world, is the message the same, or do you tune into like the culture of a country? Do you tell people in Germany? Do you bring it to people in Germany in a different way than
Good question.
over here in Holland, or is it a universal message?
Some places are different. The message isn't really different, but it's adapted to the person. So the more direct someone is, that changes it. If the people tend to come at something in a roundabout kind of way, then it takes more to bring them in a sense.
But that's not bound to a country. That's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you
you
don't
didn't
when
answer the
you when you
question.
talk to
This
people
is somewhat a country.
when you talk to people, it's not talking to a group. It's talking to one person at a time. Then to make sure the message gets through.
Yeah.
Isn't that really exhausting?
He's laughing too.
It's not exhausting.
Yeah, because you actually talk to
Just
groups, John.
responding to what is there in that person.
You're not talking about individuals. You
Whatever
talk to
level
groups.
is open
We just
within
watched a
them,
video of
then
you
speaking
talking
to
them.
that level, and then beginning to speak to what is just beneath that level that they're familiar with, so that they can still see it, perceive it,
Yeah, you find a bridge that
have a
connects them
sense of it,
from point A to point
and
C.
follow into something that they're knowing the truth of.
It's basic psychology.
Is there a difference between, let's say, the Friday and the Saturday evening when you give a talk? Is the first evening for people who just came in touch with the subject, and the Saturday for the more advanced? and
Very
the
good
Sunday for
questions. This guy's
Again, more advanced? or
very good.
Is it all mixed?
It's more mixed, but people do begin to settle in after a couple of meetings. And there's also after a day or two, there's an obvious more of a group feeling. So it's not just settling within themselves.
So then you do speak to groups, John.
settling in
You don't do
together
the
with others.
individual like you just said.
Is there any danger of sitting in the back at visiting these kind of things? It looks like very safe. When I sit in the back, I just shut up. I don't have to ask anything. How does that work? People have to have a willingness to hear your message and to also be open to your response.
It's not really a danger.
Yeah. I don't know how you answer that.
Some people are just really checking out one place and another place, in a sense, sitting back and trying to find out, what is this about? What is this person talking about? What is the reality of this? And trying to find out. What would be more of a danger is not so much sitting back or sitting in the back, but taking on something that they're realizing is true, so then really knowing something, and then instead of applying it and really living it, just going from place to place to place, and
So don't bounce
becoming
around.
increasingly insulated from really responding
Yeah, I've
deeply
said
within
very
to
similar
what
to
they're
that,
knowing.
actually. Focus
And the
in.
risk is that they just hear it and then
Then it becomes increasingly a mental thing, so there's a safety that's developed to keep from surrendering to something that's really clear within, that's really seen.
It's
For,
true.
for me, it was a risk for a couple of years just visiting these kind of meetings, satsangs.
But this isn't like a really
It felt
profound
great.
spiritual statement, though, what he
It
just
was like
said.
a
That
movie.
is
I
just
went out of the
basic
theater and
psychology.
then forgot all about it. Do you meet a lot of those people who come to your meetings for years and years and they just see it as a little nice break from daily stress?
For some, it's like that. There's so many different kinds.
Yeah. And you don't get angry at those people that you say, oh, you come for all those years. Why don't you live it?
They're contributing to his pocketbook.
No.
For some people, they come for it's sort of like a fill-up.
Okay.
It helps them in their life. It brings them to a deeper place.
That's what a lot of people do.
It helps
Touch-
them to
touching base
regain
when you need to.
perspective concerning things that are deeper, and that helps them. So then that's good.
And when someone is in the audience with a pen and a paper and writes down everything you say, do you encourage that? Or do you say, well, it's not about the words or not about remembering everything I said precisely?
Let's go back to the beginning of my video.
It's not first about the words. It's
So what is
first
it about?
about the transmission that's there, the
Trans-
deeper sense.
So
The
you're
deeper sense that they'd be recognizing of something that they're realizing within. The words can help.
So let's just
form-
pause here for a second. Transmission of something. So it's interesting. He talked about transmission in the first video, your transmission of yourself, and now we have a very different usage of the word transmission. That was a word you hear a lot in spiritual circles. transmission, source transmission, this transmission. Yet it it rarely is defined. And so he just said the transmission of something, but is he implying that he gives off vibes? That he's giving off something? Or is it a transmission that God is doing, or God is through him? So is he a God man? You see, that's a very good word, but it has so many definitions based on context that we really aren't sure what he just said. Think about that. We feel like we know the answer, but what he just said actually could mean tons of things. So is he telling us he is an avatar? Or is he telling us that he's just saying good things and spreading good vibes? Because, John's always got a smile on his face, or this funny look he's got, this sedate look. A friend once called him the stoner guru. Because he just has sort of this, laid back look. I'm not saying he does drugs, but so I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and we should respond to that. Like I would have then asked, well, what do you mean by transmission? Define the word. What do you mean in this context? He probably wouldn't, though. Let's go back.
Something of a seeing and an understanding, and to form something of a living concept of what's being experienced. So in that way, the words are good.
Mm-hmm. But you don't have to remember everything that's being... Should you forget everything that's being said?
I love this guy's questions.
Not that either.
I think John does too.
Remembering every word, and it's not about forgetting all the words.
Mm-hmm. Well, some teachers talk about Jesus who wrote it in the sand, and then the sea could wash it away, so they couldn't make a book out of it. They did, obviously, but so that's not such a problem. The words.
No.
Oh, John.
How did this come about for you? Were you suffering for a lot of years before you started to follow this path?
No.
No, you were a preacher trying to become
But
famous.
mostly people suffer, and then they think, oh, I've got to get rid of the suffering, rid of the pain.
So is he basically saying he was enlightened immediately, and
Then
that's
they
why he's a
come to you.
teacher?
Or do happy people visit?
Both, all kinds. I didn't have anything of a suffering or pain or difficulty. Things just opened up
How?
very unexpectedly.
Okay.
Yeah. So no dark night of the soul. Oh. Is there like a common, I don't know the real English word, but a common thing for everyone who opens up, that you could say, hey, there, now I crossed that bridge? Or is it different for everybody?
It's somewhat different for everyone. It depends what level someone's at. A really basic thing is being just really honest within, honest to see.
And this is a
being
guy who
open to
got
see.
caught for sex abuse.
Liking
for
seeing
not
is,
being
that
honest.
would be really important. If you're liking seeing, then you don't have a defense within yourself against seeing something in yourself or
Which means he
outside of
failed the
yourself.
basic level.
So no more barriers between what wants to be seen or what wants to be felt, heard.
There wouldn't be a point to it. If there's a barrier there, then defense mechanisms are set up to protect yourself from seeing what you don't want to see, and then
Yeah, that's
that
true.
affects your psyche, your behavior, and you start to turn into something that's far removed from what's really helpful within.
Could you call that defense mechanism ego?
Yes.
Could be, yeah.
Is there such a thing as a healthy ego?
Yes. Yeah, you see it in children, where they feel really good about achieving something or seeing something. They feel really good about themselves. So that's a special thing. Once the individuation has taken place and they come to a really healthy sense of themselves and where they are in this world, how to be with others, then when the ego continues to develop further and it turns into a deeper kind of self-importance, then that's catastrophic to a person's inner, deeper well-being.
Trying something. Sorry.
Could you name an age where you could say, like, well, now's the time to grow up? Because I can imagine when you're a young adolescent, when you go to school, you need that ego to survive, because you need to fit in the group, you need to wear the right clothes and do the right thing and listen to the right music. Is this message also for teenagers? Or should you say, wait for this when you graduate?
No, it's easy for teenagers, easy for children.
Easy to see the ego for what it is.
Not so much seeing the ego for what it is, just realizing what's real within and what's where it's responding to.
I don't think it's easy for teenagers to realize what's real
It's easy for
within.
children to hear. It's easy for teenagers to hear.
No, I don't agree with that. I think they struggle.
So
I think that's
your
why
message
teenage
is
years
not
are so
get rid of
horrible.
the ego, like some spiritual teachers tell us to do.
No,
No.
it's not about getting rid of the ego.
No.
Adi-dot, that was
If you
the
try
big
and get
thing.
rid of the ego,
Ego.
then that doesn't address a person's orientation within.
What
It's
does
just
that mean?
being mental, having
Yes.
war inside your head. Yeah. So how can I taste the difference between what's my real drive, my heart intention, however you want to call it, and what is just being in vain and satisfying my need for attention, and
I'm
how can I
going to
taste the difference?
pause here. This guy has asked some very, very interesting questions. And John's answers are pretty straightforward, but there's nothing here that's truly profoundly spiritual. Really, it's just Freudian, whatever, Reichian, Jungian psychology plus 100 years. It's stuff we all know. I mean, he's not saying anything controversial, really. Um, he's not saying anything too theologically in depth. Or, I mean, you could say this if you were an atheist, you might still say you don't know your inner self. And though, as an atheist, to say there's an inner self, you then give away that maybe there's something more. But whatever, that's a another video. But the interviewer is asking very detailed questions. And have you noticed his questions go on and on and on and on and on and on, and Sean's answers are like, vroom. I used to do an interview show for musicians, and one of the things I would try to do is ask an open-ended question, which then they can just go off on and just blah, 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 ramble. I have read and learned that the other technique is to give your person lots of information and then just let them go, yeah or no. And that's sort of what John is doing. He's elaborating a little bit, but he's often just kind of letting the guy create the conversation here, and he's not going off and elaborating and really getting into stuff. So he's really keeping it safe and really close to home. And this was the criticism I had in the first video, that he's just kind of just making it up. And I feel like that's a lot of what he's doing. He's just going, oh, okay, no, yeah, no, whatever he feels in the moment. Not that it's profound in a spiritual way, but there's no cohesive... I don't feel like John has a cohesive theology. Maybe he does, but I'm not getting anything here that's any sort of theology. So maybe this wasn't the best interview, but it is interesting. He's responding a little different, and but yeah, I just want to comment on that. And he's not taking as many
When it's
silences.
real within and it addresses something of your own being, that has you opening and softening within.
So I do know
So it
that.
takes you out of mentalizing something.
So I do know that John de Ruiter associates himself with Ramana Maharshi's Who Am I? Sense of Self-Inquiry. He's read something of Ramana Maharshi. I have too. will say, though, that when I have watched John talk about Ramana Maharshi, I feel like he just got the who am I self-inquiry and that's it. He doesn't have anything else in his head that Ramana said. He didn't just say that, he said so much more. And I feel like John just took that and he goes with it, but doesn't have any of the depth. It's rather shallow. Also, by promoting himself as having that same thing, it gives him clout. Even though he didn't train under Ramana, he started as a Christian preacher and he's very different. But to say, oh, yes, it's kind of like this, I think that, I don't know, it does whatever. And I kind of feel a little bit that he that might be his thing. We're now seeing the reference of being yet again in a second video done in a very different place. He's talking about being. So I really feel like I just said I don't know what his message is, but his message just might be this who am I, this Ramana Maharshi self-inquiry, but lacking any profound substance. I'm sorry, I don't think he's enlightened, basically is what I'm saying, and I don't think he's well read, and I don't think he's well versed, and I wouldn't even put him in the same boat as Ramakrishna. Yes, he may get you off a hump that you're in, but I think that's it. He's just getting you off a hump.
And it makes it real on an interior level. Openness and softness is crucial to a deeper sense of well-being and reaching into something that's deeper than what we're accustomed to in ourselves, deeper than our conditioning.
Does it make me a more lovable guy? Or a loving guy?
Yes. When you open and soften within, you naturally have empathy
message.
For others.
The same word, same somewhat.
Opening and softening within takes you out of being judgmental. It doesn't reduce the capacity to think. So you come into a deeper kind of clarity even in your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thinking is coming from a deeper place than what thinking on its own is. So then the thinking is serving something lovelier than what thought is.
So getting rid of thoughts, that's also not the way.
That's right.
It's the quality of thoughts you should research.
So good thoughts over bad thoughts.
The deeper within that you're coming from, the more that's reflected in the kind of the quality of feeling that you have within, the quality of thinking.
Being a little more critical about what you're thinking and not immediately following every thought that pops up. Could you call that maturity, or is it spiritual maturity, or?
That would be more of a self-maturity or maturity in what you are as a person.
Yeah, it's not a spiritual thing necessarily.
But it still doesn't address your orientation as awareness. You can have a wholesome kind of critical thought and still be sort of loosely speaking self-oriented versus being truth-oriented, where you're wanting to come from something deeper
The
than
guy
what you
is
recognize as yourself.
asking him very
because of
spiritual
knowing
questions,
within
but
that there is
John's not
something
really
deeper
responding with spiritual.
than
He's
what you're accustomed to.
pretty-
There's
pretty
always something
basic
deeper, and then as soon as you
stuff.
realize that there is, then you want to
Of course, on some
be coming
level,
from that instead of coming from something that's
the basic
subsequent to
spirituality
that.
is sort of the most important, and that's why I say
Is there
John
an
would be
end
good
to
getting
that
you
depth,
off of a
or is
hump,
that something that can
'cause he's got the
deepen and deepen
basic
and deepen? Or
groove
could
down,
you
I
say
feel.
who you have hit the bottom, or does it have a bottom, that depth?
No.
No.
There is a basic kind of shift that makes a fundamental difference, and that's living from within a perspective and an orientation that everything is as you've grown up to see it, or is as you think it is, and is as what you've experienced reality to be, or you begin to realize that there's something much deeper than your opinions, your thinking, your sense of reality. You come to know a deeper sense within, and you start to explore that, and then your whole hold on yourself starts to loosen and relax, and you start to come into a much deeper place within.
That's
and then you see others
spiritual growth,
differently,
essentially.
you see the world differently.
Could you say you see the world for the first time? as it is, or not filtered, not colored, or
Much more so.
yeah.
And even being in nature then changes. Then instead of experiencing nature in the way that you're accustomed to, then there are deeper levels of nature opening up, so then you experience it more as a oneness. There's more of a deeper levels in your
personally,
body
I feel if you're
interacting
truly
with
profound,
what nature is, and that begins to mean more to you than
you're truly enlightened, you can experience nature in the middle of Manhattan. You know, everyone's like, you can experience this oneness in the middle of Manhattan. You know, people say, like he just said, well, when you're in nature, you know what? It's easy being enlightened when you're in nature away from people. It is 100% super, super easy to be miles away from everybody, up on a mountain, or in an ocean, or in a field, and feel a profound sense of calmness. Doesn't mean you're enlightened, and it doesn't mean you're perceiving nature in a different way. It's just easy. It's like it's easy to feel good on a sunny day versus when it's raining. Personally, if you're truly enlightened, that rainy day, you're going to feel good. Being in the middle of Manhattan or San Francisco or LA, you can feel oneness. And you know why? Because yes, these buildings were built by man versus the trees, but everything's created by God. The building was created by a person who is a child of God. The building material, everything, this is God's world. If you can't feel oneness in the middle of a city, it's not, I don't think, truly enlightened. I think it's just being in nice places makes you feel nice. Nice weather makes you feel nice. Being outside of the city makes you feel calm, because cities get you agitated. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're enlightened. So whenever they bring up nature, and he's not the only one, I've seen other teachers do this, I always go, true enlightenment, you find it anywhere, because it's not like God is in the country, but he's not in the city. Of course he's in the city. He's everywhere.
the perception
It's my
from
rant.
within yourself of nature, so then the level of nurture in being in nature is deeper and greater.
No, it's just
So
perceived
you
differently.
enjoy it more, or you feel it more, or
Feel it more, enjoy it more.
Yeah, because you don't have honking horns.
See it in a way that has
Doesn't mean
more
you're
in
enlightened.
it than what you're used to.
Yeah, because we're used to living in the
and
city.
does that make you like when you walk through the city with all kinds of buildings and no nature at all? Does it make you feel less at home then, or?
No, because when deeper levels open up within, then you have that deeper leveled relationship with whatever it is that's around you.
And then why didn't you just say that, John? Why did you
bricks
mention
or
nature?
plants?
Bricks.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I just
Nature-
said.
Nature is in
Because he
everything.
fed it to you.
Also bricks and
You can,
big
you can
buildings.
find it in anything. If you can perceive it, you'll see
Yeah,
it.
so what was the point of talking about nature? Because
This
you
is
get
wood.
it more in nature.
Once was a tree, so you see it. You see a tree instead of just a table, or
It's not, well, I can perceive it that way, but even more than that, there's a life, a deeper life that is within everything. So then there's a deeper resonance, a capacity to, in some way, merge with what's there. There's nature in what wood is, which is not then wood anymore. It has a
So now he's kind of
consciousness to it. So there's
backtracking
a
to
possibility
kind of
being in relationship
bring these
with
different ideas
the
together. You know,
environment
so
that
he's
you're
saying,
in,
oh, but there's
instead
nature
of,
here.
being separate from it and looking at something.
you see
The
there's a
interviewer
living
caught him.
thing. It's not static anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
You notice he's not smiling. He's more
Yeah,
serious now. 'cause
I
he's-
imagine that would be nice, just walking through the Amsterdam and seeing everything vibrating or full of life, instead of only recognizing it in nature.
And he doesn't say anything now.
What's the main change you feel when people sit with you for like 2 or 3 hours?
Oh my God, such a
What's the difference between people when people walk in and people
Hey,
walk out?
The main difference would be people coming to a sense of a deeper restedness within, coming to a sense that there's much more to reality than what they've perceived, and being really touched by that and nurtured by that within. So then walking away and realizing that there really is more within, and having a hands-on, deeper sense of being able to access that and being at home in that, and that it's not a profound difficulty to come to a self-realization or a deeper realization than what yourself is within. So that it's all, it actually works and it's accessible. It's not complicated.
Is that the main obstacle you have to overwin? That this message in essence is so simple that you keep on searching for another few years to prove to yourself that it is that simple, that it's not more difficult.
That is a difficulty for people, because they're thinking that if something is so profound, whether they regard it as self-realization or enlightenment or whatever the term is that they have in their thinking, that the perception is that for something that is that deep and that would answer so much within, that it must be really difficult to come to it. And even though they realize at different times how simple it really is, there's still a subconscious influence of it has to be much more complicated than that. It has to be difficult. It can't be really easy and really simple.
Yeah, nothing comes for free, or that conditioning that you have to work.
So this reminds me of a story I was reading about a Zen student who learned that enlightenment is instant. Actually, this is from a book I was reading about the marathon monks of Japan. And the guy goes, yes, I asked a question to my sensei, and he pushed me into the river, and I was instantly enlightened. So, what John just said, it's simple. You could just, right there. What's the sound of one hand clapping? Well, it wasn't that. And it could just happen. Here's the catch-22 with this. So this Buddhist monk was like, yes, I fell in the water and boom. But he'd been practicing for 10 years or more than that. And he'd run hundreds of miles in marathons. And he'd done lots of work to put him in that place. So is enlightenment, you're done? Is it truly that simple? We say it is. But literally, if it was, couldn't I just say to you, that's it? And you, watching me right now, are instantly enlightened? Doesn't really happen. And people say, well, I had a moment and I was instantly enlightened. But I really believe it's not. It's a complicated road, and we go up and go up and go up, and we then put ourselves in a place where we are now open to having something instantly happen. 10 years earlier, would the monk, had he been thrown into the water, had instant enlightenment? No, because I don't believe he was in that place. So we say it's easy, but I think that's because we're looking at the event, but not how we got to that event. So I just want to put that in. It's like a little pet peeve of mine. So I truly don't believe enlightenment is easy. I believe it takes work, and I believe it takes time and patience. And then it seems like, boom, instantly, I'm there. Wow. But it's not. It's a process, but we forget the process, and we don't really maybe want to dwell on a 20-year process, but it is a long thing, which means, we go around living our life doing whatever we want, watch porn all day, and then all of a sudden I achieved enlightenment. People who say that, I don't think they have. So if you want to truly achieve it, you need to work and do things and put yourself in a place where you can have it. So watching porn all day may not be the place. So it is work. It does take work. It won't happen instantly. We have to put ourselves in that place. That's my teaching.
Hard to get something. So this is the most beautiful and simplest message of all, but we still overlook it.
Yes, and it's also a difficulty for people in really realizing something that is so lovely within. to let go of the things that they're holding on to. So then letting go of being in disagreement with something so lovely within.
I wonder
Is
if
that
he's
it?
quoting a
That you're
speech.
disagreeing with that?
So that's often a thing I see with gurus is they'll be asked questions and they'll give an answer like he did at the beginning about Amsterdam. And then they'll be asked something more spiritual. And they're not actually living in the moment. They start just regurgitating speeches they've done and saying things they've said to 50 groups or 1,000 groups or whatever it is, or stuff they've written, and they're actually in autopilot. And I don't know if he's doing this because I haven't really watched much, but we sometimes hear these words and go, oh, that's such a profound answer. But really, when we get into these teachers, they're just regurgitating something they've said. And I'm wondering if he's doing that because I'm already have pointed out where I heard things that was in the previous talk. So he may use the same words over and over again, and he's kind of just regurgitating stuff. So that's what I'm thinking.
Inner sense?
And you can't see my cat
Well,
playing
if
in the
there's,
background right now.
you can have a deeper inner sense and at the same time be holding on to something in yourself and not want to let go of that because there's an emotional attachment to it or a mental attachment to it.
That's life.
Do you point to like belongings, your wife, your children, or the mental concept you have of yourself? All of that?
Yes, and a little bit deeper than that. Believing that you need to have what you think you have. Mm-hmm. So the believing that you need to keep it, you need to secure it for yourself.
I was wrong about John.
Just relaxing within and enjoying what's there and being in the deeper nature of what you have instead of seeing it as a surface thing, a surface something.
I said he didn't have a theology. I think he does. I think he has this sort of the who am I thing. I'm really feeling that now. And I already mentioned that, but now I'm really feeling like, yeah, that's his thing. Who am I? What am I? I think he's got that. His whole sales pitch is this who am I, Ramana Maharshi thing. I think that's his thing. It's not necessarily original or anything. Doesn't need to be original. But I feel like, yeah, I think that, so I was wrong when he said he didn't have a theology and it was just for gibberish. It might be, this is an interview, it's slightly different than a talk, but I do think he does have something. He's got his niche and his focus of where his teachings go. So I will pull back the comment I said earlier that it was just completely gibberish. There is something here. Because he's echoing a lot of what he said in that first talk we listened to.
So I shouldn't get rid of all belongings, my wife, my children, and then I can realize this. It's not, that's not the right way.
That would create an impediment.
How you mean?
An impediment that would, in a way, that would make a person worse because they'd be believing something that they're not knowing the truth of, believing something they perceive. Mm-hmm. That everything they have is in the way, so then believing to get rid of it all. And if you get rid of it all you've done is really secured a belief, secured something that you're not actually knowing the truth of. So then
how do you know the truth, though?
A misperception.
So how do you know what you have is not a misperception?
Spiritual ego, or yeah. So could the final question be, or is the final question, can this be found in the world?
Yes.
Because I searched
letting
for
the
happiness
interviewer
in the world.
feed him information.
Couldn't find it. So, yeah, all the things on the surface you could find, but how do I find it in the world then?
In the midst of being in the world, you can find it in the world just as you can find it in nature.
But he asked how, John. How?
When you're in nature, there's a natural response. It's a lot easier in nature. There's a natural response because there's a beingness that you're relating to in nature, and there's a nectar in that, there's a nurture in that. When you're in the world, it's more difficult to perceive because there are things competing with what you're feeling and what you're thinking.
But how do you perceive?
But as soon as you begin to become rested within, even somewhat in the way that you are in the midst of nature, then your perception changes in the midst of this world. Then you begin to see differently what's outside of you because what you're coming from within is a little bit different.
Okay.
So I don't have to meditate for 10 hours a day to see this or to deepen this, or
Meditation helps.
So really, he said, take the
Ultimately,
country
it
with
isn't
you.
what works. When you begin to meditate, you begin to realize something within that matters more than what you've perceived in yourself. As soon as you realize that, then you don't need to meditate. Now you can just be what it is that you were realizing. The tendency is that when something begins to work, that you continue with the technique instead of being in what you were realizing within
But
the
what if the
technique.
realization is just a passing thing and it's just temporary? So you just be with something that's temporary
do you come to
versus
Amsterdam every
meditating
year,
and finding
or
something
is
deeper?
it just now a rare opportunity to see you in person?
For now, each year.
Okay, because this weekend you give how do you call it yourself? A retreat, a satsang, a meeting?
Meetings.
Meetings in truth?
He
or-
doesn't use any words like satsang. He doesn't use any of these
Not even
traditional
that.
words.
No.
I think he feels like
I-
I'm willing to bet he feels like
Is
that
there
pushes
such a-
people
such a
away,
thing
makes
as,
him too religious.
truth
He doesn't
in
want to be
words?
religious. He's a guy in a suit.
Yes, just as there is truth in feeling and truth in thinking. The reality of it is limited to the depth within that you're coming from. So the more deeply you've realized the truth of something, the
But how do
more
we know the
your
truth?
thinking then
How do we know
is
this
able to
realization?
work for
How do
where
we know
you're
it's
coming
not
from.
the wrong information?
So again, the quality of thoughts
The quality of
grows.
thoughts, is that how?
Does the quality of feelings also grow?
Yes,
Everything grows.
everything becomes much finer, and there's much more of the exquisite that's perceived and felt.
I'm going to pause here and tell a story about a woman I knew. She was a Zen teacher at the San Francisco Zen Center. It's early 2000s. And I can't remember her name, and I don't remember if she's still there. But I was in a class with her, and she goes, when you achieve something in Zen, whatever it might be, it's not that you wash away your emotions and you're completely stoic, like, oh, yeah. But you feel things more intensely, she said, sometimes good and bad, because you are now in the moment and fully in those emotions. You're fully feeling the emotions. She goes, that's what Zen is. It's not getting rid of them, it's feeling things more intensely.
So could you compare it to eating at McDonald's and then eating at a 3-star restaurant? Better quality of taste, everything, sight.
Or, yes, or eating a homegrown carrot or tomato, or eating something that's been force grown.
Yeah.
There isn't nearly the same kind of flavor.
Do people get angry at these kind of meetings? Do they stand up and say, well, go to hell? Or how does it work?
It can happen. That'd be pretty rare.
Yeah, I don't think that
Or
happens.
is there always like a peaceful atmosphere? I imagine feelings come up, feelings of anger, feelings of do people cry a lot at your meetings? Maybe after half an hour or an hour?
That can easily happen.
Yeah.
A person can be easily quite teary because of being really touched within and beginning to open within and realizing something that really matters, and all of a sudden it's really working.
Is there like an aftercare of people? Because I can imagine when you hear this message for the first time, you're flabbergasted. You walk out of the room and someone has to take your hand and say, let me walk you to the bus, to the station.
Not really. It's not unseating someone's mind. It's just taking their awareness deeper within.
Yeah.
Instead of being a person, realizing they're a self, and instead of being a self, realizing that they have a heart, and instead of just having a heart, realizing that they're knowing the truth of something in their heart, and they're just taking deeper and deeper.
So the truth is in your
There's
heart.
always a deeper level.
It's not in the scripture. It's
You
not
don't
anything
throw
else.
them
You
into
know
the
the
deep and say,
truth.
go swim.
I think that's what he's saying.
No.
Unless they're
Because
the
there
wrong
are some
thoughts.
teachers
But how do
who
we
are
know
so
that
radical that
what we know is the
we hear
truth?
stories of people who visit them and they stay there for an hour and they can't go
And
to
how do we
work
know
the
when we
next
found
week
it?
because they're so confused.
I know people who think they found the truth in
So that's
themselves,
something you watch
but they
over.
haven't,
But people don't get too confused.
because they're still watching porn all day.
It's not a mental approach, it's more of a heart approach.
Mhm. But it can be mentalized. Oh, now I have to do this and that, and I don't have to use my name anymore. No, don't call me Patrick. Call me consciousness.
No.
No. So you could say
That,
people,
that would be more of a mental trip,
yeah.
putting someone into a mental trip.
So you could say the people who visit your talks are a little into the subject, that they don't get crazy about this and start doing crazy things.
I gotta pause this. I saw a video the other day on cults. It was actually talking about politics, but this guy was like, look, these people are stupid. They're in a cult. I disagree with that, and there's others who will agree with me on this point. Stupid people aren't the ones who are in a cult. Stupid people don't necessarily go to John de Ruiter or to any guru. A stupid person is the one who's watching porn all day and just sits there and life is just blah. They're floating through life. People who go to John de Ruiter, people who join cults, I'm not saying John is a cult, but people who join fringe religious things aren't stupid. Quite often they are very intelligent. They will blow you away with the intelligence. What has happened is they've become so intelligent that they see that the world is maybe not how it should be, or that there's more to the world. And they are now trying, maybe desperately, to find that secret of what the world really looks like, as he said, or to find the feeling of nature in the city, or to find themselves, their being. So they don't join these cults because they're, oh yeah, I don't know, whatever. No, the people who join the cults are very intelligent and are wanting to know something, and they think John has that, or they think somebody else has this, or Muji or whoever has that secret, and so they get involved in this group. I have known computer programmers, web designers, authors, historians, musicians who have been cult members. Very intelligent people, sometimes intimidatingly intelligent. They're not in the cult because they're stupid. They're in the cult because they know there's more, and they can't find it, and they think, maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. So I just I wanna make that point. I was thinking about it the other day, how we have a stereotype, but that's actually not what we see. I just want to make that. I think that's a very important thing to remember.
It's the whole focus is taken away from concepts that tease the mind.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
going
Looking for
into
something.
some kind of mental trip.
Yeah, looking
It's
to get
more
away from the mental
realizing
trips.
something that you actually know the truth of within. So it's not about being impressed by a higher concept or a deeper concept.
Getting away from those
but
things.
realizing something that works right now, and immediately there's a restedness, a settledness within, and a capacity to open and soften and be much more relaxed within and knowing something deeper than what you're accustomed to.
So
And there's a nurture to that.
less craziness. Final, anything you want to ask me?
No?
So
Okay, thank you.
there's a part
Thank you.
2 to this video, and I don't know what the part 2 is, but we're going to go into it. It's only 11 minutes long. I'm just going to let this play. This is my longest episode ever, I think.
So
And
John, you just told me to.
if you're watching this live, come back to it later today or tomorrow. I will put chapters in it because you don't necessarily want to sit and watch the whole thing. So anyways, here's 11 minutes, 53
Move
seconds.
into the light. how do I move into the light?
By realizing what it is that you actually know the truth of within. So you have your perceptions, you have your thoughts, you have your beliefs.
But those aren't the
And
truth.
of everything that you believe is true, what of that do you actually really know is true?
How do we?
How do I know if it's true?
That's my question.
The first 6 years of my life, 7 years, I believed in Santa Claus because someone told me that there was such a thing as Santa Claus. I was very afraid of him. And so all the things you
That's been my question.
thought were true were told to you or taught to you. But now I have to trust you when you tell me this and this is true. What's the difference between Santa Claus, someone telling me believe in Santa Claus, and this?
When you begin to really look at what you actually know the truth of,
But
it's going to be very little. And that's a
Okay.
difficulty for people.
so very little is the truth. But how do we
To
know?
really know the truth of something, it really comes down to a beingness that you recognize within, a kind of beingness that really answers you, a kind of beingness that really meets you.
So if you feel connected to something, that means that's the
And
truth.
that takes you out of concepts that you've taken on, concepts of reality or truth that you've adopted,
But what does that really
to
mean?
look at what you actually really know the truth of.
But-
Is going to be really quite little.
And I would agree with that. But what is the truth? What does truth mean?
Is there anything I know
And
that
those
is the
dishes are in
truth?
the video, not or the sounds are in the video, not me.
Let's say it like this way. Is there anything that I know that is true?
If you go into your heart, what you realize in your heart, when you're quieted within your heart, what you realize and you end up knowing the truth of is that it's true for you to open within and soften within. And when you close within and you harden within, that's not true for you, because that goes against what you are in a deeper level.
So if
that
you're
creates
soft and
a split in-
hard, then you are not.
So
Yeah.
could you say that everything that warms up your heart is true and everything that makes it cold is not true?
That's something that's different when you say something opens or something warms your heart or makes your heart cold. Then you're talking about something outside of yourself. But within, to respond to what beingness within warms you, then yes.
He's good.
It's not a mental thing. It's
But
a feeling thing.
But the guy's not getting it, and I'm not getting it either.
There's feeling to it. It's more so
Because it's so vague. His
when you're
answers are
responding
so
to
vague.
something that you actually know the truth of deeper within, it has you being deeper within. And of course you can feel that.
Because you could
So
feel
it
the
has
deeper
a-
within and you know the truth, but
An effect
he's just going in
on
circles.
your
He's never
interior, where
defining
your
these
interior
words.
is
Define
nurtured.
what is
There's
truth. Tell us.
A wholesomeness.
So
that
wholesomeness then is
satisfies on a
truth.
deeper level. It may not satisfy your thinking or your understanding, but it has an immediate effect of meeting you within.
And also bringing up all pain, I presume.
Yes.
And that could easily be translated as a depression or I
He's
feel
not answering the
depressed
question. He
and
didn't
I have
answer
to
the question.
quit this rubbish. It makes me feel sad. Do I have to go through this or just let
So-
it happen?
It's neither that you have to go through it or let it happen. It's that you're able to be something deeper within than what the depression is. And when you realize that, then you can be that in the midst of the depression. As soon as you're being something in the midst of the depression that is not what the depression is, then the depression doesn't have the effect on you that it used to have, because you're coming from something
Greater
that's
than it.
other than what that is.
He
You
said
could say,
this
like
a million
in
times.
the
I'm
midst of
willing
the
to bet.
storm, it's quiet. In the eye of
Yes.
the storm. So feeling depressed, feeling lonely, that's something that comes up sometimes. How can I get in the center of feeling lonely?
when you're feeling lonely, then there's a need to have something, perceiving that you need deeper company, more company, or a certain kind of company that you're not having. When you move deeper within, then immediately there's a core kind of satisfaction. When that core satisfaction is there, then that takes you out of the need of something you're perceiving that needed to be there outside of you.
So, don't you need anything from the world anymore?
You need something from outside of you, such as food. For your body to be healthy, you need to eat.
Fresh air.
Yes,
But
but you don't need a healthy body for you, for instance, to be at profound peace within. So then someone who, if you find out that you have cancer and you're dying and you have very little time left to live, as soon as you drop to a deeper level within, then you become free of what it is you perceive you're needing of living longer. So then there's a restedness within, a profound peace within, and then living or dying isn't what first affects you anymore. That you're in touch with something much deeper within.
and how does it work when someone in your surroundings is facing cancer, or how can you? It brings sorrow. Doesn't bring peace.
Well, it can bring peace being with someone who is having cancer. Is if your satisfaction within is simply meeting the other person, then you're not meeting cancer. You're meeting what's really there within, and that, of course, affects the other person because that other person is really being seen instead of being perceived or seen as someone who's a victim to cancer.
So does the labeling stop of putting post-it notes on someone? He's a man, he's a patient, you strip it down to the essence.
All of the labels are still there, but they belong only on the level that the labels appeal to, and that there's deeper within than what those levels are. So all of the levels exist at the same time. So then it's seeing the labels, seeing the level that's deeper than that, seeing what satisfies that level, seeing the level that's even deeper from what that is, until there's a relationship with the essence of a person in the midst of everything else that is there also.
Could you call that love?
Yes.
Love, being, God, all the words for that unnameable thing, which isn't a thing.
Love is more immediate. To call it something like God is too big of a concept. That takes a person into thinking. Thinking about something that they don't necessarily even know the truth of.
So I'm going to pause here and just let you know I put a link just now into the description below of John de Ruiter's official website. So if you should like to research him more, go to the source. Also, I was looking on Amazon just now because he has 2 books out. One is a collection of talks, and then one is about parenting and sexuality, and very sellable topic. So, yeah, I was just reading the reviews, and one of them said that, he's deeply realized, but not the most articulate teacher. But I don't know if he's deeply realized. I think he just has a basis in psychology, and I know he studied Christianity for a while, so if he went through any Christian pastoral training, I don't know if he did, but if he did, very likely what he could be saying here comes out of that. But he just mentioned God. And you notice he goes, no, that's I don't want to say God. And I mentioned it already, his lack of religious terminology. Instead he says the self and the being and openness and this and that's sort of his phrase. It's almost like if he uses religious terminology, he'll pull his audience down. But if he uses these broad words, more people are going to tune into him, because there's a lot of people who just don't want anything to do with religion. For me, that's like hard to believe, but they are like that. And the moment they hear God, they think, oh, I've taken the Sunday school as a boy and I absolutely hated it. Or the church, Muslims, Buddhists, oh, it's all stupid. I don't believe in mythology. But when he's talking about these things without using the word God, without using the word Jiva, without using the word super soul, whatever, it's very appealing to people who don't like God, who don't like religion. Because you can say, I follow John de Ruiter. I'm not religious in the least, even though what he is spouting is kind of basic religious stuff. It's a way of being spiritual, but not religious, because religion is horrible. In the West, we see religion as horrible. But spirituality, problem with spirituality is often shallow, and I think there is a depth of his stuff that is incredibly shallow. I think he is at the low end of the pool doing his teaching. But it's interesting that he would just back up when the guy said God. He doesn't go, yeah, God. No. God is this. I don't want to use the word God, essentially is what he's saying, because that implies religion, and I can't sell books that way. I get the feeling from him that that's what he's doing. It's not my take. It's not my thing. But I know people who that is their thing. They don't want God. They don't need God. They really just need to get through the day. I have been in communication with a friend of mine of many years ago whose father died, 93 years old, and he had moved in with his dad, single guy, in his late 50s, early 60s, around 60. Dad died, just the two of them, and he fell into a slump, he said to me in email, for 5 years. He said, if I could have slept for 5 years, I would have slept. He goes, I just got up and did the routine, didn't do anything, just life was just not functioning. And then I realized I had to wake up. Life had to be lived. So he goes, I started reconnecting with people, got involved in a Catholic church, and he told me he's really into these billionaire self-help influencers, and he just loves them, and they're so amazing, and he just finds so much, they're just so enlightened, and they show off their cars and their houses, and they're just so amazing. I'm like, yeah. And I wanted to say something like, wow, they're very materialistic, just harping high school level stuff. No, you can do better. But I realized that here is a guy who's 65 years old, who I actually have called a psychopath, maybe to his face, whose life has been very sheltered, very full of jealousy, not fun, not good. And he told me, he goes, yeah, in the last 3 years was the first time in my life I had fun and I enjoyed living. For him, he doesn't need profound, let's talk about Shiva and Shakti. He literally, these millionaire self-help people, I might not want to touch with a 10-foot stick. And certainly I don't present myself as a millionaire self-help person. But for him, that might be exactly what he needs, because he's a very materialist guy. This is a guy who bought a $4,000 watch. It was a self-winding, not self-winding, you had to wind it, because he felt like that would make him happy. It didn't. So the next day he went and bought another watch, which is the one he wore. And just, that was the type of guy he was. And then down the road, when I knew him, he was like, why did I do that? And I said, well, because being happy is not in materialistic things. Oh, I want to have a glass of wine. Would you like to break a bottle of wine with me? But we gotta have the good wine, and it's the expensive wine. I'm like, so I see John de Ruiter, and I might have been a little harsh in his first video. This interview's not bad, though I think he's at times been really in the moment, and other times just regurgitating his script. But there are people who, if I shared this video with him, and I like this second one better than the first one, I bet there are people, like my friend, who if they watch this is what they need to hear. they're not interested in a discussion of Ramanuja and Shiracharya. They're not going to read the Vachanamrut. They are not going to read the Mahabharata. They don't even know what this is and they don't care. They don't need any of that. They don't even want to talk about God. It's a very basic life. And then hopefully in the next life, my friend will get a little higher on the whatever. He'll have some mistakes will be purged. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting thing with John de Ruiter because, yeah, I don't think he's a bad guy. Has he done some sex things and does his ex-wife hate him according to the news articles? Well, I read a lot last year and I think he's probably guilty. I think he probably was deluded by power. I think he's always been a bit of a narcissist who wants to be famous, and he's found how to make it work. And he's changed over the years. He was the surfer dude. Now he's the business suit guy as he's gotten older. It's a good look. The surfer thing wouldn't work now. He's silent. He does this. And he's got his little niche. So I give him credit as a businessman, and I'm a little bit jealous. Just be honest with you. As a profound spiritual teacher, I don't think so. But some people, like my friend, may find value in him. And that's a funny thing. It's a hard thing for someone like me because I want to respond to my friend with no, but I realize that I can't. He wouldn't be receptive. I have to give him what he knows. And John said it earlier, you have to get to them right under the level for something that's familiar. And this is a really a life coaching thing. I think as a life coach, you want to give someone what you like, but you really can't sometimes. Sometimes you have to recommend the teacher who I personally don't like. And it's a very interesting thing to then wake up to how other people are and what they need and how different it might be from you. And then you have to say, well, do I send this video of John de Ruiter to my friend? Even though I think he can only take my friend so far, but maybe that's as far as my friend will get. I don't know. It's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting philosophical spiritual discussion. Spirituality is a don't have the word. But let's finish this up. I really just ran out of words.
How do you call it?
Just on an experiential level, deeper within, it would be love.
Yeah.
The love is immediate. As soon as you open within and soften within, the result is that love moves.
And it's not something you can get out of another person, or is it something that can be shared or only can be recognized?
Recognized. If you're recognizing it and knowing it and you're in it, then of course you're also sharing in it. If you're in it, you can give it. If you're not in it, you're not able to give it. You can only give what you're in.
Mm-hmm. And does that love need the world to appear?
No. It's already satisfied from within. So there's a response
So the love is satisfied by what's inside.
to the same thing that's outside of yourself.
You see, this is
When you're coming from what love is, then you also
What is
see
love?
love in others, even if they're covering it up.
but what is love?
So you
And
can see
who-
love inside of...
Where does it come from?
It's a
Love is
murderer
something that comes from a
or-
being, so there has to be a being, as I knew.
or
I
a
guess that's
thief.
just but no
So-
God. We don't mention
Yeah.
God.
But do they know their love?
I like this look
For
of
some
shock
people,
he
it's
sometimes has.
difficult for them to find it or reach it. But as soon as it's touched within them, then they see it, they know it.
So the song "Love Is All You Need," "Love Is All You Need" is a miss. How do you call it? They got it wrong. The Beatles, "Love Is All You Need."
Well, they also said 8
All
days a
you need is
week,
love.
so
All you are is love.
Well, it depends on what your understanding is of that.
But is it a needing
And he hasn't
love,
defined
if I
it to let
understand
us
you right? No, because
bring the
love is
understanding
already
to the
there.
situation.
Yes.
So all love is all you can give. Or love
If that's
is-
what you're coming from, love doesn't, in itself, it doesn't need to be loved, and it's not needing to love. It's
But
just a
what
natural
is love?
beingness that comes from you. You whatever it is you're coming from, that's what you'll be giving to people.
So when you're hateful, all you give is hate.
That's true.
And when you're sad, all you give is sadness. It's a starting point where you come from.
It is.
Yeah. Okay. I hope to see you again when you're in Amsterdam or maybe Germany or Belgium. And do I have to bring anything when I visit your meetings? Maybe a bottle of water, a lot of tissues, a nice pillow to sit on.
Nothing really.
No. It's at Roos here in Amsterdam, the meetings, or just the opening evening?
Just the opening evening.
And the rest of the talks is in... Hoe zeg je dat? Balgebouw. Toch? You could say it in English, the ball building.
Okay.
That sounds a little bit strange. Okay, thanks again and have a nice time in Amsterdam.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there we go. It was quite an experience watching. What are we at, my friends? 2 hours of John de Ruiter. Wow. That was really interesting. Obviously, I'm not... Hopefully, I gave him a little more of a chance than the 7-minute video. And if you're still with me and if you watch the whole thing, hopefully I've gotten a better picture of him. Am I going to read his books? No, I have other things to spend money on. If you sent me his books, maybe. I would definitely read it if someone gave me a book, but I'm not going to buy it myself. Would I watch another video of him? Yeah, I'd be willing to do that. Wasn't bad. I didn't have a horrible reaction to him like I do some, but I feel like there is some manipulation going on. I also would like to clearly say I did not imply that he was cult earlier. I don't really think he is a cult leader. His ex-wife may disagree, and there may be a small group of people surrounding him who are kind of cult-like. But I think in general, with all the people he reaches out to, and it's a lot, I don't think it's a cult. I think he's a salesman. I think he's a salesman, if anything. A businessman who does what he needs to, and he's got his niche, and it's working, and he kind of stayed off the radar. I do know that at one point he sort of stopped promoting himself as a spiritual teacher and started changing that, like it was more of a like a life coach thing, more so than spiritual teacher. He's totally downplayed the spirituality aspect. That is so obvious. He's totally changed that. And as I said, in his early days, he was like the Germinator or something. So this is interesting. Again, I think I kind of summarized him not so long ago when I said some people may need him. Some people may not. I don't think he's giving out bad teachings. I think you could probably get a lot from them, but I think they only get you so far down the path. Not very far. They're just very basic. But that might be exactly what you need, and I might be so crazy wrong, and you might think horrible things about me, and that's totally okay. But I gave him slightly less of an hour, and so yeah. So here we have my first reaction video. And I don't think this will be the last one by far, unless you guys totally hate me. So, yeah. Suggestions are welcome down below. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I think we're just going to end there. Next week, I will be doing a show on why I am a Hindu. And it's going to come from a position of sort of why I'm a Hindu, compare and contrast with Christianity, which was the best way for me to present this, because a lot of you are combating Christians, or I think Christianity is a threat to Hinduism, so I'm fighting for the faith. It is a pre-recorded show. I did it last week, one morning before work. I'm editing it, but I'm going to present it live, so it won't be a true live show next week. And then actually I'm going to New York City for a week. I'm going to see some old bandmates of mine. I'm seeing Gary Newman, the musician, and I'm hoping to bring back a video or two to share with you on some things I find there. I have a particular place that I walked by once when it had no meaning to me, and now it has meaning to me, and I want to pull out my camera and hopefully share some things with you. So yeah, it's very exciting. I haven't been back to New York since I moved away 11 and a half, 12 years ago. So that's really exciting. So look forward to that, and some stuff, and spiritual stuff, and political stuff, and all sorts of stuff. And we will be doing this again. Support the channel. You know how. Click all that stuff. And yeah. Well, I gotta get lunch now, so thank you for joining me on this introductory journey to hopefully a new aspect of this channel, and I hope I promise not to do 2-hour shows. Jai Shri Krishna. I wish you the best in your spiritual life. I truly do want you to advance and grow as far as you possibly can before going into the next life. So thus your next life is even better than this one. Jai Shri Krishna. Om Namo